Alrighty, so thank you very much everybody for coming today. We appreciate your time. We're going to be going over the BIM360 design service overview today. So a couple of things to be set up things, just a few things to go over before we get rolling. Everyone's going to be muted for the duration of the webinar. If you do have any questions, please fill them into the questions box. I'll keep an eye on that throughout the presentation. And if nothing else, if I can't fit those answers in during the presentation, I'll answer them all at the end. So a little intro. So if you're not familiar with Microdesk, we are an AECO consulting firm. We've been around since 1994. We have 12 locations throughout the U.S. We also have one in the U.K. now, so we're moving international. We have over 170 technical consulting specialists and software developers on staff. So our team has a background in the different industries they came from, whether that's architecture, engineering, construction. So we've all actually done the work. So we know the software, we know the workflows and how to make things happen. But more importantly, we actually understand how it really works in the industry. We're not, as some might say, book smart. Now, the things that we actually do with a lot of our clients, we work with building information modeling, of course, and that could take the place of us creating content for them, creating models, working with them and augmenting their team. We also work on more long-term assessments and planning for strategies, mentoring, and again, we have a development team on staff that can create software, plugins, modifications to really make sure that everything fits the needs of our clients. Now, for today's presentation, it's going to be given by myself. So my name is Peter Marchese. I'm the Senior Technology Evangelist over at Microdesk. My background was I worked as an architect for about 10 years and then moved over to Microdesk. I've been in the industry for longer than it feels like, over 23 years at this point. And my focus has moved into a lot of the emerging technologies, like the cloud services we're going to talk about today, as well as other things like VR, AR, all the other fun craziness. Okay. So our agenda today is going to be doing a nice overview of BIM360. We're going to talk about BIM360 design specifically, how you set it up, how you coordinate, and then a little bit at the end about how you actually get access to this. So, BIM360 design. Now, a little bit of a setup here. How we're getting to this is based on a lot of different industry trends. So we're getting a lot more urbanization and globalization. More places are having specific mandates for BIM. And as we get to larger projects, as companies and governments are mandating this, the teams are becoming much more distributed. And with this, we're also having to deal with a lot more data. Some companies are really going after this and doing great things with that data. They are analyzing it, accessing it, working it, and really getting to understand what's going on within their practices. But either way, we're still having a lot more information than we might not have used in the past. We have to figure out how to deal with this. And a lot of the problems that we run into this, both from a collaboration as well as a data management standpoint, is the security and accountability of this. How do we ensure only the right people are accessing it? How do we ensure that the team is actually talking to each other and really understanding what everybody's doing? And as anything happens, our projects are getting more complex, we're having less time. And the old tools that we used to use, we got very efficient at using them, but they're not as efficient as they could or should be for the work ahead. And that's leading us to a lot of the things where we have here. We have multiple firms all working on a single project with a lot of content that goes way beyond just documentation. So it's inspections, it's checklists, it's email, it's submittals, it's RFIs. In a lot of cases, these things become more and more segmented. So what we're looking for is a real solution that can bring all this information together, keep it consistent, keep it coordinated, and make sure that we're not losing the value of all of this data and content that we're creating and working with. And one of the cool things here is, like anything else, data, we've been able to see that implementation of different cloud technologies is insanely beneficial. So the Boston Consulting Group, they're actually the ones who came up with the number for the 30%. And when you think about the larger scale of things, so the $1.5 trillion on a total of $10 trillion in output projected by 2023. So it's not a small number. So what we're looking at as the solution to this is Autodesk's BIM360 Cloud Services. So it's meant to encompass the entirety of a project, from design all the way into handover and operations, and it's built on consistent data platforms for analytics, insight, and on an open API called Forge. So that enables us to actually extend the functionality if we need to connect it to other tools. If you already have tools that you use and you want to see if those two can be merged, we can look at that. Now, BIM360 is not brand new. It's getting a lot more of a push recently because of updates. So there's been parts of it that have been around for a while. Those are, in many cases, now deemed as classic. That would be something like BIM360 Team, Plan, Field, Glue. It's the next-gen services that we're focusing on today, which is part of BIM360 Document Management and Design Collaboration. So currently all of our next-gen services, they're packaged up into 4 different groups. We have our BIM360 Docs. That's sort of the base. That's the document management service. So that includes all the things like file versioning, viewing, markups, issues, the typical components that we're going to see that is available throughout all of these. The one that we're going to be focusing on today is the BIM360 Design, which includes design collaboration and the document management service. This is really going to allow us to have multiple teams coordinating, tracking the versions, and really getting a good understanding of what everybody is doing on the project to really make sure that we're all maintaining that communication. And don't worry, I am going to hop into the service. It's not going to be death by PowerPoint. Now, typically when we look at this, the document management is, again, the backbone of my project. This is where a lot of my content is going to be. And the first time I hop in here, I'm going to have my home page, my dashboard. This gives me analytics and insight into my project. Where are we with things? Are there outstanding issues or markups or design packages that I haven't actually looked at? So this gives me that first glimpse into what's going on with my project and what my due dates might be if I have anything to deal with. I have the ability to view and understand a lot of different file formats: CAD, PDF, Revit, IFC, Navisworks, InfraWorks 360 models. All of these things are models that in file formats that I can view in the cloud on a web browser. Now, one of the components of this has the plan section. That actually allows me to pull out and extract the sheets from different design files. So if you have a multi-page PDF or a drawing with XREFs or a Revit file with sheets, this actually allows me to have my sheet views show up the way I would need to track the versions of the sheet or the view as opposed to the version of the file. So that's more for when we get into CA though. But regardless of if I'm using the version as a file or a sheet, I have full version control. I can see when something was updated, by whom, and then I can actually compare and contrast the differences as well. From a 2D view to a 3D view, depending on what I care about. And when I do find problems, I can create issues. I can assign those issues to people, and I can give a due date on that. And I can easily see what the status of that issue is, and I can also easily go back to the original view that that issue was created in. So when I go there, it doesn't show me what the current model is. It shows me what that was in context when it was created. And the big thing of all of this is that control, making sure that the right people are seeing the right data. So I can manage my permissions from a folder standpoint, and I can do that based on the individual person, by the company, or by the role that I've assigned them. And to access things from a desktop, make it easier, there's a tool called the Desktop Connector. So that's the BIM360 document management side of things that the BIM360 Design sits on top of. So the two of them do go hand in hand. Now, the BIM360 Design component acts as sort of like a cloud Revit server. But that's an overly simplistic way of thinking about it because it does a lot more than Revit server ever did. So first thing is, again, we've got our BIM360 document management. I've got my file up there, and I can see the other folders that I have been invited to. So each team, each project team, is going to have their own folder that they can work in, and they can manage who can or can't access that. And what will normally happen is those teams will work in their little world. They'll iterate, they'll update, they'll make changes. But once they get to the point where I need to share my work with the rest of the teams, they'll create a package. And that package will include views, other models, different content that they want to send to the other teams. Those other teams will then review that package, because their team doesn't automatically get it. They have to confirm that it meets what they needed, and then they can actually consume that. They'll start using that package as their background to work off of or to coordinate with. And then those other teams do the exact same thing. They work, they update, and they create their own packages back and forth. But every team is still in full control over their content that they work with. So this is one of the big differences when we move from Collaboration for Revit to BIM360 Design, is having that ownership and control over your content. Now, when we've created those packages, what we're going to have is essentially a view, a timeline on our project. This allows me to see who made a package, when they made a package, and if that package has actually been utilized. I'll go more into that in just a minute or two. Now, one of the great things about this, and this is one of the things that a lot of our clients have just started liking right out of the bat, even if they're not using BIM360 Design, is the comparison tool. When I receive a new package from somebody, one of the first things that I can do is ask it to explore the changes. So I just got a new version of the model from my consultant. I don't know what they changed. All I have to do is click on one button and it shows me everything that was added, everything that was removed, and everything that was modified. And all of the things that were modified, I can actually filter that down even smaller. I can say, show me only the things that were physically modified. They moved from A to B. Or only show me the things who had their properties modified. Did they change the work set that they were on? Did they add data like the model number? So depending on what I'm looking for, I can easily filter and organize all that information. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to hop into that service. So what I'm looking at now is my account administration. Because again, a lot of the information here, we're going to have to set this up and organize it. And this makes it very easy for me to do so. I can see all my projects. I can actually search by the projects. I can track the different members and companies. And again, that insight and analytics, I can easily come here and make sure I have an understanding of what's going on. How many members are using specific services, and making sure that I don't run out before I start a new project. Once I've started that project and I hop into the administration of that project, I can invite my users. In this case, I can see all the different services that are currently activated and how many people are accessing the different components. So I can come through here and in one location manage what people have the right to see and don't see. So it makes it easy for me to do my job as an administrator. And again, I can see what companies have been invited to the project, manage the different services that are in that project, and if I need to, I can always update the profile of it, the data in here. And then I have my main dashboard. I can see my different submittals, project checklists, RFIs, and in this case, my design packages. So from my from my project dashboard, what I can see here is that I have a handful of design packages that have been created. These open circles tell me that those packages have been created but not utilized or consumed. The ones that are filled in, those have been created and those have been consumed. So again, this gives me a nice overview of what's going on in my project. So I'm actually going to go into my document management now. So I can use this little shortcut here to open into that. And when I hop into my project, what I can actually see is my project files and a folder structure that was created based on my teams. So let me explain this for a second. When you first start using BIM360, one of the things you actually have to do is you have to do a little bit of setup. So are you using one service or the other? So you'll turn on Document Management, And then you can turn on BIM360 Design, the design collaboration feature. When you're doing that, you're actually going to be creating something called a team, and that team is how I organize my project. So if I actually take a look at that, this is going to show me that in this project, I've broken it up into 3 basic teams for a demonstration: architecture, MEP, and structure. On a real situation, I would most likely have this be the name of the companies, because I might have more than one mechanical company. I might have multiple architects working on the project. And those different architects might not want to work in the exact same area. They might want to have their working space, and then they send the other company a background when they're ready. In that case, I would have separate teams for each of them, because that's really what the team is. It's how you can create your own space to work in. The creation of these 3 teams automatically creates some of the folder structure. So I have my architecture folder, and then I have my consumed. And then if I look down here, I also have a shared folder. That shared folder includes all of the different teams that were already created, and I can create custom folders in there as well. So in my case, I wanted a folder that the civil team could upload their content to, and I wanted to have a folder that I can put my Navisworks files in, so I can add things as needed. So what happens is I've got my working model in my teams folder, and then I have the background folders in the consumed folder. So my users who are working in Revit, they're going to open up and navigate to architecture. They'll open up one of these 2 files that are currently there, and that's it. They just start working. As I work on it, people can log on to the website that have the right access. They can track my versions, they can look at my markups, and they can look at issues. So if I actually look at this, I'm currently looking at version 8. I can see that there's a couple of markups that are in this. One of these is published, meaning that everybody on the team who has access to this model can see it. One of these is private, meaning that only I have the ability to see this markup until I say I want it published. And I can just click on that, and it takes me right to the view. I also have my issues. I can easily click on that. That'll take me back to the view where it was created in. As the view loads. And in these cases, the nice thing about the issues is that everything inside of them is actually tracked. So I can actually keep track of the versioning, the history of this, what's going on, and when it needs to be dealt with or taken care of. There we go. Now, the other thing here is that comparison that I mentioned before. So I've got my versions. I can change my view to different views, whether it's a 2D or 3D view. In this case, I'm actually going to try one of my 2D views. I'm going to go from version 8 to 7. I'll say compare. So in my 2D view, I can still see all the things that have been changed by being added, removed, or modified. And it color codes all of these. I can click on these, and that'll give me the data on that. So the shape of that changed. And this allows me to modify and actually see everything. And again, I can actually filter this as well. So if I only want to see the modifications, that makes it easy for me to actually filter that list. And if I want to, I can export this out, and I have a nice little report that I can work off of. Now, that was me just working in a normal view of that model. So I'm looking at the model that I have. But what I can also do is go into my design collaboration view. And that's where a lot of the real controls happen for BIM360 design. So if I go to Design Collaboration, I come in here and I see I'm in the architecture team. There we go. And currently I can see I have a couple of sets. And if I click on this little pull down, that shows me where I am with things. Each of these filled circles show me that there was a package created and consumed. Now, if I switch myself to the MEP team, and I can only do this because I'm an admin, and I'm included in all of the different packages. All the different teams, sorry. I can see that there's an open circle here. That means that at one point, the architect created a package, and the MEP team did not consume it. They did not start working or download that. So essentially, if someone creates a package and sends it out, you still have control over whether your team is actually working with it or using it. I can click on that package. I can explore it. I can view it. In this case, they only gave me the ground floor. They only gave me a model. Maybe there wasn't enough in there at this point in time for my team to start working. So in that case, they waited for the following one. Has more information in it, has more content. That one was actually consumed. The process of consuming that package actually takes this version of the model that was published and copies that into the consumed folder. So again, once that consumed folder is updated, it overwrites the previous one, and then the teams that are working off of that, they now have access to that in their backgrounds. So if I'm an architect and I'm linking in the mechanical and the structural model, once that package has been published and then my team decides to consume it, I'm working off of that. But again, my team has control over that choice of when or if even to access that package. And again, I can explore these. One button, upper right-hand corner, says Show Changes. And same thing, it runs through and starts showing me all the different components that changed between those two releases. So I still have full control over what's happening and when it's happening on my projects. Let me actually do that one. And when something is actually modified, one of the things that I can actually do is I notice if something actually moves from one spot to the other, I can actually hit a button and I'll see it animate from space to space. So this tells me it was actually moved by about a foot. And I can switch back and forth. So being told something moves is nice. Being shown where it moved from and where it's moved to is much more helpful than just having an XYZ value on a piece of paper or in a document. This makes sure that I really understand what's going on in the model. And outside of that, I still have the typical tools that are available to me in BIM360 for viewing. I can do live section cuts. I can get my measurements. I can click on elements and read their properties. And if I am really having trouble understanding what I'm looking at, I can always do a split screen where I'm looking at one thing on one side and something different on the other. So in this case, I'm looking at the two versions comparatively. In other cases, I might have a floor plan on one side and the 3D model on the other. And when I click on something in one view, it automatically shows me that same thing in the other view. So this really makes it easy for me to understand what I'm looking at, how it's changed, or how it relates to the rest of the project. Now, the great thing about this is if I'm a Revit user, so I'm actually going to switch to Revit for a second. If I'm a Revit user, nothing really changes for me at the end of the day. When I'm working, I look to open my model, and I'm opening it up from BIM360. That's the most visible change during my normal workday. If this is my first time working on the project, it'll take longer to download or open than normal because I'm downloading the entirety of the project that I'm accessing from the web. Once I've got it downloaded, it'll be in my local machine's cache. So it'll just keep pulling from there. And I'll be uploading or downloading just the changes as opposed to the entirety of the project. Now, for the people who are acting more as the BIM coordinator of the project, well, they'll have a couple of things that they can manage. The published settings is probably going to be the biggest thing. When I was looking at my BIM360 design projects, those packages I was creating, I was pulling from sets that were created here. So that's how I was choosing what views do I want to be a part of the package. What components do I want to be accessible when I put it in the browser or on the web. So this is where I can determine what those are and what they include. So I would come through here. The preview is always great so I can actually understand what's in the view. So I just have to tap on one view and I can actually see it over here. Choose that, save it and close, and then sync my model. Once that's done, those sets are now available to the viewing in the browser, and allows me to control that. But the great thing about this is as an end user, somebody who's just inside of Revit doing the work, it doesn't change the process. You're still just doing the work in Revit. A lot of the processing is happening in the back end in the cloud, so that I don't actually have to worry about that. So once it's saved, the people who are in my team, they can now see all the changes and work that I've done, whether that's in a 2D model or in a 3D model. I should say 2D view or 3D view, sorry. And again, if I have issues or I've created issues, I can easily see them all in one spot. And everything here gets tracked. So when I'm looking at an issue, I can see who did it, when it was assigned, if there are attachments assigned to it, like additional photographs from the field, or with, spec sheets or other PDFs and content like that, all this activity gets tracked. And if I'm sending my files to other teams, I want them to actually be able to review things, I can actually track all of the access on my document management side. So in this case, I can see that I've downloaded a couple of files, and I've viewed files. So all the access to my project actually gets tracked. And this can actually be exported out if I need to have an off-site log. So I've got a couple of questions going up here. So one of the questions is, what about changes in 2D? So one of the things I was looking at here, let me hop into my folders again, is I was looking at an actual 2D view, or the view in a 2D view, like a floor plan. Now, if the question is more along the lines of detail content, I would just want to make sure that I'm comparing the detail view against the detail view. So in this case, I'm looking at the different sheets that I have. In this case, let me actually do this. So I don't actually have schedules in that version. Okay, so let's do that. So what I was going to do is compare my schedules, because that's purely 2D. It's detail content. It doesn't actually exist in the 3D model. And that would have actually compared the sheet view content. Since I actually didn't have that schedule in the other view, I didn't use it. But it will compare the 2D content in those views. In this case, it's just showing me what changes between these two ones that I did choose. Okay. Okay. Let me exit that viewer there. So a couple of other questions. In terms of the publishing, so when I do a cloud sync, it's no different than syncing on the network. So like if I'm in Revit, save my file to the central file, synchronize there, anybody else can get running with that. When you're creating a package, so in this case I go to BIM360 Design Collaboration, I say that I want to create a new package, and then I want to publish that out. That is much quicker than it had been in the past for collaboration for Revit. So most of the ones that I've been on, maximum takes about an hour or two. It's not something where I have to start it on a Friday and it's ready on Monday. It's not going to be like that. Let me hop back over here. Now, another question is model management. So if I have a model and that I would like to delete, how do I manage that? So you actually can't necessarily delete the model from Revit. So if I wanted to remove the model here, I can go there and I can delete that. The users on the project will still have access to their local cache until that gets cleaned out. But it is possible to delete the models. However, the nice thing is, me as an admin, if somebody accidentally deletes something, I can go into a deleted items. So essentially there is that recycle bin. I could always bring things back. And if that's not really the problem, but the problem is there's something wrong with this version, I do have the ability to actually roll back to the previous versions. So let's say something happens in version 8. We need to go back to 6. I can always select 6 and say make that current. And that essentially rolls back my project. And you also have the ability to download that source file of that version. All right. So a couple more things, and I'll get back to answering a couple of questions. Now, what we were looking at was BIM360 Document Management and BIM360 Design. You can expand this with other tools and plugins. So there's tools that will connect BIM360 to cloud software that will analyze and auto-tag site photos, project information. There's ones that will do overlays of your project with models that have been created from UAVs. The great thing about this is it makes it very easy to do the comparisons like I just did with the model, but a comparison between what the design intent is and what's actually happening out in the field. And again, our team does a lot of different customization for clients, so we're always testing different apps before we publish that for our team, for our clients. But it's very easy to add these customizations. So some of these actually work for augmented reality. We've been working a little bit with DAQRI. This allows us to take the models that we have on BIM360 and then start adding augmented reality overlays with that, so that way you can walk the real project and get that data. Now, in terms of getting access to this, if you own the previous version, so in this case, say BIM360 Field or Collaboration for Revit, that means you already have access to the next-gen version. So if you have, again, one we're focused on today is BIM360 Design, but if you owned Collaboration for Revit, you've got BIM360 Design, and that's vice versa. So if you purchased it now, that would give you access to the classic products, which is something that's important if you're working on an older Revit project. So BIM360 Design currently only works with Revit 2018.3 and newer. So if you are on 2018.2 and older, that would have to live on Collaboration for Revit using BIM360 Team as its backend. It's a little bit different, doesn't have the same features, but it still does allow you to do the cloud collaboration. BIM360 Design is definitely a next gen to that, with all the additional controls and features that it's adding. Now, in addition to that, there currently are trials for Docs, Glue, and Build. There may be a trial coming in the next couple of months for Design. Not sure about that. And if you do own the AEC collection, there is actually the ability to get a 12-month trial of Docs if you haven't had that before. Now, there is actually a roadmap that Autodesk has been publishing, and there is actually a place if you want to post out ideas, if you feel it needs certain things. Go there, just post a comment, or vote on comments that already exist, and Autodesk is listening on that. The great thing about the BIM360 service is that they are cloud-based. So there are updates every month. There are changes that are coming very rapidly for people. And it's not like the desktop applications where if you don't get a service or a feature that you were waiting for, you essentially have to wait for next year's version. So things are coming very rapidly, and they are really looking to make sure that it does everything that people want it to do. So again, main things here is that we have that single source of truth. We're not uploading the model into Glue and then uploading it again to Field and then uploading it again to Drive. We are not having to maintain the IT structure for this. We actually have one client in Milwaukee who has been working with us for a while. They switched over to BIM360 Design, and that has allowed them to replace their VPN connections. So they can have their team working from home, working from site, working from anywhere on their projects. And they're very happy with the reduced costs and overhead for that. And again, I showed you the logs. All project activity is trackable. I can look at the different versions and compare 2D as well as 3D information. And I can easily review that in the browser from anywhere. So if you have, say, a long commute on a train, I can open up my iPad and review the project and do markups. And we have project managers that rather than opening up Revit to review the model, they'll open up the browser because it's actually faster. They can look at the comparison tools and see what their team has actually worked on. And the benefit, again, is as they move from design, we have a connection to the pre-construction tool. Cool. Alrighty, so jumping back into the questions. The video here will actually be uploaded to our YouTube page. That usually gets done within a week of this presentation. Another question is, how do we deal with cloud outages or downtime? So there's a few things that we can do. One of the first things is to keep an eye on as well as sign up for alerts from the Autodesk Health page. So this is actually just health.autodesk.com. This shows me the current status of all of their different cloud services, as well as telling me when they're scheduled maintenance. So you can actually come up here and say subscribe and choose all of the different services that you care about or that you're subscribing to, and you'll get an email whenever there's something going on with that. So whenever they're about to do like maintenance to any of the services, I'll usually get an email about 3 to 6 days beforehand, so that way I can plan accordingly. And in some cases, they're letting me know several weeks in advance for BIM360 Field that they have maintenance set up. But let's say that something does go down. I still have all of my local files that I can take advantage of. So if I have a very tight deadline, I can't wait 15 minutes to an hour, then I can take that and turn it into a local central, meaning I'm putting it on my Office's server, and I can keep working on it from there. Question here, if the files are downloaded to the local cache, does it break the link to the cloud model, or will it still sync when changes are made? So if we're talking about downloading the model from the actual BIM360 document management, so I go over here and I say I'm going to download that, that basically is downloading a detached model. So it's not actually connected to the central. So that's me if I need to download it and archive it, or I want to download it and use a different means to share it with somebody else. And that also ties into another question. Can I retrieve old model information without losing current model information? So go to Save As. That's one thing you can do. You can still do a Save As. I can also download the source file. But if the goal there is really just looking at old model info, easiest way to do that is literally to go back to that old version. So if I click on this, I'm now actually looking at version 6. So I've gone back to the old version. I can bring up properties. I can still look at different views and sheets. So right now I'm looking at the sheet view from version 6 as opposed to version 8. And I can still get the properties of the elements in there. So it's not necessarily required for you to download that file to get access to that information. I can still do it this way. And I can still do my split screen if need be as well. Another one here is version management only permitted by admin. Currently, there's some changes that are going to be made with that in terms of accessing the team. Right now, only service admins can access this. So when I'm looking at my overview, I can actually assign who is technically an administrator of the design collaboration. Again, that's one of the reasons why I could move back and forth between the different teams on the BIM360 design view. But when I'm looking at these folders, there you go. Let me hop out of this view for a second. I could modify the different levels of permissions. So in this case, everybody here has the full control. So if you just say view and upload, that means they won't have the ability to delete anything or modify the version management. Most users are going to be view, upload, and edit, which at the moment does allow the deletion, but that is likely to change in the future. Another question related to the different versions. Yes, you can still do a save as of those versions. Again, when we're looking at the version history here, you have the ability to download the source file when looking at the different versions. Okay, question here, can AutoCAD and Civil 3D sheets that are part of the project be captured here as well? So when we're talking about BIM360 design, AutoCAD content that is a part of the Revit model, yes. However, if what we're talking about is just CAD files can be shared, CAD files can be viewed, they can be linked into our models, but there is no cloud collaboration tool for AutoCAD. So as long as we're clear on that portion. So I can still put them up here. I can still even open up and access my CAD files from the desktop connector that we talked about. So I can access that through the links here. It's just not going to do user management or file locking for CAD. But if I need to actually include the CAD files, I can do that. And you do have the ability to view, navigate, mark up, do issues for CAD as well. And for looking at this with the white background, that is something that I can actually change to make it look a little bit more like AutoCAD. So even though that we're looking at all this content in just the browser, there still actually is a good amount of control and modification that I can do for navigating models, navigating drawings, or even PDFs. Question still related to AutoCAD. Would you need to upload CAD files to the cloud, or could it reside on a local network? Honestly, it could work on either. If you want to take advantage of the viewing or the markup capabilities, it would have to be on the cloud. But if you're going to be linking them in, you can leave them local as long as no one unloads them from the Revit model. CAD files that are linked into a Revit project are cached. But if you do put them on the cloud, that ensures that everybody will have access to them and everybody will be able to see them when they're opening up the Revit file. Alrighty. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. I definitely appreciate it. We do have a quick poll that we would like everyone to just take a second at and look. If you have any more questions that we didn't get a chance to get to, please feel free to reach out to us after this. I'll show you how you can do that in just a minute. All right. So coming up next, we have two other webinars. We have one talking about Bluebeam Review 2018, some tips and tricks on the new version that was released this year. We also have one coming up on our Microdesk Accelerator. It's a Revit plugin that has a lot of automation that our internal team has actually created. So we'll be going over how to take advantage of using that for a lot of different features. You can find more information about both of these on our website by going into the Education Events website, location. And if anybody does have more questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Easiest way is emailing us at team@microdesk.com. Again, everybody, thank you very, very much for your time. We really appreciate it. If anything else does come up, please feel free to let us know. We'll be glad to help out. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day, and thank you very much.